The stars shone cold and distant above the Galactic Council Hall, but inside the chamber the atmosphere was heavier than any planet's gravity. The Great Hall was carved from black stone brought from a dozen worlds, lined with banners that once stood for unity and strength. Now those same banners hung like faded memories of a better time. Representatives of many species sat in silence. The room had always been filled with noise, debates, laughter, even arguments, but tonight it felt as if sound itself had died. Everyone knew why. The Karvek were coming and no one could stop them. The Karvek had attacked without warning cycles ago. They were not like other enemies the Alliance had faced. They did not talk, they did not trade, and they did not stop. Their fleets poured through space like a storm, crushing colonies, tearing down defenses, and forcing proud worlds into surrender. Each victory of the Karvek was another wound in the Alliance. On this day, the Council met not to plan another defense, but to face the truth. The Alliance was losing. High Chancellor Veyran, a tall being with crystal-like skin that shimmered under the light, rose from his seat. His voice carried the weight of his people's sorrow. "My fellow leaders," he began, "we have fought bravely. We have sacrificed. But I fear our strength is no longer enough. The Karvek destroy all who oppose them. Their numbers grow with each conquest, while ours grow weaker." His words were followed by murmurs. Some leaders lowered their heads, others clenched their fists in quiet rage. A warrior from the Tren species slammed his claw against the table. "Are we here to accept defeat?" he demanded. "The Karvek will not spare us if we surrender. We must fight until the last breath." A gentle voice answered from across the chamber. It was Speaker Lero of the Orin, a bird-like species known for wisdom. "And what will that bring us, General? A final glorious death? Our fleets are scattered. Our soldiers are tired. Hope itself grows thin. Tell me, is there no path left but destruction?" The argument spread across the room. Some called for desperate attacks. Others spoke of surrendering to save what little remained. Voices rose, tempers flared, but none could offer a true solution. At last, silence fell again, heavy and bitter. The leaders looked to one another, and in their eyes was the same question. Is this the end? It was then that Elder Maorin, the oldest member of the council, rose slowly from his seat. His body was frail, his voice quiet, yet the hall grew still at his words. "There is one path we have not walked," he said. "One ally we have not asked," confusion spread. "Who?" several voices asked. Maureen's gaze turned to the far edge of the chamber where a star map flickered. He spoke with care, as if recalling a story from the past. "The humans." A wave of surprise swept the chamber. Some laughed in disbelief. Others frowned. The word itself seemed strange, almost forgotten. "Humans," one leader scoffed. "They are rare, scattered. Their homeworld was lost long ago. What could one human do against the Karvek?" Maureen's eyes glimmered with memory. "You forget. I have seen them. Long before this war, I met a human explorer. Their kind is unlike any other. Fragile in body, yes, but their spirit—" He paused, searching for words. "Their spirit does not bend. When others accept defeat, humans refuse. Where others see impossible, they see challenge. And when victory is denied to all, somehow they find a way." The room filled with uneasy silence. The idea seemed foolish, almost desperate. Yet there was something in Maureen's tone that lingered in their hearts. High Chancellor Veyran spoke carefully. "And where would we find such a human? We do not keep armies of them." "Perhaps we need only one," Maureen replied. The thought hung in the air. For some, it was madness. For others, it was a spark of something they had long forgotten. Hope. After much debate, the council voted. It was not a vote of confidence, but of desperation. They would send a message across the stars, calling for any human who could answer. Few believed an answer would come. Many believed they had wasted their last chance. Days passed. The war front grew closer. Every hour, reports of fallen worlds arrived. Each message was another dagger in the heart of the Alliance. Then, against all expectation, a reply came. It was short, simple, only one sentence, carried on the channel of an old trader ship. "Tell me where to meet you." The council gathered once more, anxious and uncertain. They waited as a small vessel descended into the docking bay. From it stepped a lone figure, wrapped in a dark coat, boots worn from countless journeys. His face was calm, his eyes sharp, carrying the weight of battles unseen. The council watched in silence as he entered the hall. Compared to their towering warriors, his body seemed ordinary. Compared to their gleaming armor, his clothes were plain. Yet there was something different in the way he walked. Steady, fearless, as if the despair in the chamber could not touch him. When he reached the center, he looked around at the gathered leaders. No arrogance, no fear, only quiet confidence. "My name," he said, his voice firm, "is Captain Elias Drake. I heard you need help." The council stared at him. Some doubted. Some hoped. None spoke. Finally, High Chancellor Varen asked, "Do you understand the enemy we face, human? They are countless. They are merciless. We are already broken. What could you possibly offer?" Drake's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Show me what you've tried," he answered, "and I'll show you what you've missed." His words echoed in the chamber like a promise, daring them to believe. For the first time in many cycles, the council felt something stir within their weary hearts. It was not certainty nor safety. It was something far more dangerous to the Karvek. It was hope. The council had expected little when they summoned a human. Most believed no answer would come at all. Yet now Elias Drake stood before them, calm and unshaken, as though he carried no fear of the storm that had broken the galaxy. The chamber was silent. Dozens of eyes, bright-scaled, feathered, and mechanical, studied him. Some leaders leaned forward with interest. Others leaned back with doubt. A few whispered in their native tongues, not bothering to hide their disbelief. High Chancellor Varen broke the silence. His crystal-like skin glimmered faintly under the light as he spoke. "Captain Drake, you know the Karvek press against every border. You have seen the reports, yes?" Drake gave a small nod. His voice was even. "I have read the transmissions. You're losing ground fast. Every defense you've built, every formation you've trusted, it hasn't worked." The words struck some as arrogance. A growl came from General Tren, the clawed warrior who had shouted in the last meeting. His spiked tail rattled with anger. "And you think you understand the war better than we do? We have fought for cycles. We have lost armies. What do you offer?" Words. Drake didn't flinch. His eyes, sharp and steady, met the general's. "I offer perspective. Sometimes it takes an outsider to see the cracks you've missed." The general snarled, but Chancellor Varen lifted his hand for quiet. "Then what do you propose?" Drake glanced around the chamber. "Don't give me your fleets. Don't give me your armies. Give me something small. An outpost. A squadron no one will miss. If I fail, you lose nothing. If I succeed, you'll know I can help." The leaders exchanged uneasy looks. Many muttered against the idea. Some laughed outright. Yet others leaned forward, curious. There was a strange confidence in the human's tone. Not arrogance, not foolish bravado, but the calm certainty of someone who had already thought through the danger. Elder Marin, the frail counselor who had first spoken of humans, smiled faintly. His voice was soft but firm. "What is the harm in trying? We stand on the edge of defeat. One more gamble will not break us. Let us see what the human can do." The chamber divided into argument again. Some claimed it was madness. Others claimed it was pointless. But in the end, desperation weighed heavier than pride. The council agreed. Elias Drake was given command of a forgotten outpost near the edge of the front lines. The outpost of despair. The outpost was called Vera Station. Once it had been a proud defense post, but now it was little more than a husk. Its shields flickered weakly. Its crew was tired, their spirits broken. Supplies ran low and hope was scarcer still. When Drake arrived with a single shuttle, the soldiers of the outpost stared at him in disbelief. They had expected reinforcements, new weapons, or even a fleet. Instead, they received one man. Commander Rethan, the officer in charge, greeted him at the docking bay. Rethan was tall, his scaled skin pale with exhaustion. His voice was dry. "So you're the miracle the council has sent us?" Drake gave a short smile. "Not a miracle. Just a man." The commander shook his head. "We don't need a man. We need ships. We need weapons. We need hope." "Then maybe I can help with the last part," Drake said simply. The crew muttered as they watched him walk through the station. Some scoffed. Others ignored him. None believed he could change anything. But the human did not seem to notice their doubt. He studied every corridor, every system, every weapon platform. He asked questions not about what they had, but about how they thought. "Why do you place your turrets in fixed lines?" he asked one engineer. "Because that is how we've always done it," came the reply. "Why do you attack only in formation?" he asked a pilot. "Because it is the proper way," the pilot answered. Drake only nodded, but behind his calm eyes, ideas were already forming. Training the broken, the next day he gathered the soldiers in the central bay. They stood in rows, arms crossed, unimpressed. "I know what you're thinking," Drake began. "You wonder why you should listen to me. I'm just one man. No armor, no claws, no wings. But let me tell you this, wars aren't won by numbers. Wars are won by minds." Some laughed under their breath. Drake ignored them. He continued, voice steady. "The Karvik believe they cannot lose. They use the same formations again and again because they think no one can resist. You've been playing their game. I'm going to teach you a different one." The training was unlike anything they had known. Drake did not demand perfect lines or rigid drills. Instead, he broke them into small groups, teaching them to move with speed, to strike from unexpected angles, to adapt in the middle of battle. He ran them through exercises where they had to think, not just obey. He set traps, riddles, and even games that forced them to outsmart one another. At first they resisted. They failed. They grew frustrated, but slowly something shifted. Soldiers who had once moved like tired machines began to move with energy again. They argued, debated, and laughed in ways they had not done in months. For the first time, they felt alive. Commander Rethan watched from a distance. At first, he shook his head, convinced it was wasted effort. But when he saw his soldiers smiling again, when he saw a spark return to their eyes, he began to wonder if perhaps the human was right. First test only. A week after Drake's arrival, the Karvik struck. A small raiding force descended upon Vera Station expecting an easy kill. Alarms blared. Pilots scrambled to their ships. Soldiers rushed to positions. In the past, such an attack would have ended in disaster. But this time, Drake was there. He stood in the command center, calm and clear. "Remember what I taught you. Don't meet them head-on. Make them chase you. Make them think they've won." The battle began. Karvik ships swooped in tight formations, blasting at the station. But the station's defenders moved differently now. Instead of locking into rigid lines, they scattered into unpredictable patterns. Small groups of fighters struck suddenly, then vanished into cover. The Karvik grew confused. Their heavy ships wasted fire on decoys. Their formations broke apart. At Drake's command, hidden turrets activated at just the right moment, ambushing the enemy from blind angles. In less than an hour, the Karvik raiders retreated, something they had never done before. The soldiers cheered. For the first time in months, they had not only survived, they had won. Commander Rethan approached Drake after the battle, his expression unreadable. "You did what I thought impossible," he admitted. "But this was only a small raid. The Karvik will return in greater numbers. Do you truly believe your methods can hold against them?" Drake's eyes were calm, but his voice carried quiet fire. "This was only the beginning. They think they are unbreakable. I intend to prove them wrong." A growing whisper word spread quickly. Across nearby systems, rumors began to grow. The outpost that had once been forgotten had stood against the Karvik and survived. Some claimed it was luck. Others whispered of strange new tactics. But among the soldiers of Vera Station, a new feeling had taken root. For the first time in a long time, they believed in something greater than despair. They believed in their human commander, and the Karvik, who had never known hesitation, now carried a new word in their reports. A word spoken with unease, human. The victory at Vera Station spread through the ranks of the Alliance like fire on dry grass. Soldiers who had once felt only despair now spoke of courage. Commanders who had expected certain defeat now wondered if the humans' methods could turn the tide. Yet many still doubted. To them, the raid had been small. The Karvik had sent only a minor force. Surely when the enemy's true strength returned, the humans' clever tricks would fail. Captain Elias Drake knew this too. He did not mistake one victory for the end of the war. To him, the skirmish at Vera Station was only proof that the Karvik could bleed. Now came the harder task, showing the Alliance that the enemy's weaknesses were not only real, but exploitable. Studying the enemy, Drake spent long nights in the command center, studying battle recordings. The Karvik ships moved in rigid blocks, their formations precise, their weapons overwhelming. To most commanders, this made them invincible. But to Drake, it made them predictable. He pointed at the star maps where the Karvik fleets had destroyed Alliance lines. "Look here," he told Commander Rethan. "They attack in the same pattern every time. They trust their numbers so completely that they never imagine anyone would dare break formation. That's their strength and their weakness," Rethan frowned. "And you believe we can exploit this?" Drake gave a small smile. "I don't believe. I know. The commander studied him for a long moment. Slowly, his doubt began to soften. Teaching the new way over the next days, Drake drilled the soldiers of Vera Station in ways that confused and frustrated them. "Break formation," he ordered during simulations. "But we will be vulnerable," one pilot argued. "Only if you let them dictate the battle," Drake replied. He taught them to scatter, regroup, and strike from unexpected angles. He showed them how to use space itself as a weapon, hiding behind asteroids, vanishing into radiation clouds, then reappearing where the enemy least expected. When engineers complained that their weapons were weaker than the Carvex, Drake nodded. "Then don't try to outgun them. Outsmart them. Force them to shoot where you aren't. Make them fire until their own strength betrays them." The soldiers began to see battles not as hopeless fights, but as puzzles waiting to be solved. At first they stumbled. They made mistakes. Old habits nearly broke them. But each failure taught them something new. And under Drake's watchful eye they grew sharper, faster, more daring. The test of shadows, the Carvec returned sooner than expected. This time their force was larger. Dozens of ships closed in on Vera Station, determined to erase the insult of their earlier defeat. The crew grew tense. Fear whispered in the corridors once again. But Drake stood before them, steady as stone. "You've trained for this," he said. "Trust your instincts. Remember, they think they know exactly how you'll fight. Show them how wrong they are." The battle began with thunder. Carvec ships rained fire on the station, but the defenders no longer clung to static lines. Fighters darted into asteroid fields, striking from hidden positions. Small groups drew enemy ships into ambushes. At one point, a squadron of Carvec ships surrounded 3 Alliance fighters. To the enemy's shock, the fighters split apart, weaving in patterns that made targeting impossible. While the Carvec tried to adjust, hidden turrets activated, striking their exposed sides. Within hours, the Carvec were forced to retreat again. The station stood, scarred but alive. This time, no one called it luck. Changing the Alliance news of the victory traveled fast. Other outposts began requesting Drake's advice. Commanders who had once dismissed him now sent envoys, asking to learn the human way of war. The council itself summoned reports. Chancellor Varen listened with a mix of awe and disbelief. Elder Marin simply nodded, as if he had always known this would come. But not all were convinced. Some leaders grew uneasy. "This human makes us abandon tradition," one argued. "We have fought in formation for centuries. To scatter, to deceive, to fight like this, what honor is there in it?" Majorin answered softly, "Is there honor in extinction?" Even those who opposed could not ignore the results. Doubts in the dark though victories grew, Drake knew danger still loomed. He could see it in the eyes of his soldiers when the fighting stopped. They were stronger, braver, but deep inside the memory of defeat still haunted them. Late one night, Commander Rethan approached him on the observation deck. Stars glittered beyond the glass, cold and endless. "You've given them hope," Rethan admitted. "But I must ask, why do you do this? You are not one of us. You could walk away, find safety somewhere else. Why fight for a war that is not yours?" Drake was silent for a moment. His gaze did not leave the stars. "Because I know what it's like to stand against an enemy that believes it cannot be stopped. I've seen worlds fall because no one dared to try. If I can stop that from happening again, if I can remind you what you're capable of, then that's enough." Rethan studied him quietly. For the first time, the commander bowed his head in respect. The enemy learns. The victories did not go unnoticed by the Carvec. Their warlords, proud and unyielding, began to ask questions. How had a forgotten outpost resisted them twice? How had small groups of soldiers broken their mighty formations? In their reports, a new word appeared again and again: human. At first, the Carvec dismissed it as meaningless, but as the defeats continued, unease spread among their ranks. The very idea that a single human could disrupt their perfect order was unthinkable, and yet it was happening. Their commanders swore to end this threat. They prepared larger fleets, deadlier weapons. If the Alliance had found a new trick, they would crush it with overwhelming force. But Drake had already anticipated this. He knew the Carvec would respond with greater power, and he was ready. Preparing the storm in the weeks that followed, Drake pushed his forces harder. He taught them not just to fight, but to think like their enemy. He forced them to predict what the Carvec would do before the battle began. You cannot wait for them to act, he told his soldiers. You must be there first. You must make them react to you. He showed them how to use false signals to trick enemy scanners. He taught them to build decoys that appeared as warships. He trained them to strike, vanish, and strike again until the enemy could no longer tell where the real threat was. The soldiers no longer laughed at his strange methods. They no longer doubted. They followed him with fierce determination. Commander Rethan, once his harshest critic, now stood at his side. Together they began planning not just defense, but offense. A whisper becomes a roar soon. The alliance began to change. Other commanders adopted Drake's teachings. Fleets moved with new flexibility. Soldiers began to believe not only that they could survive, but that they could win. For the first time since the war began, the Karvek hesitated. Their fleet slowed. Their commanders grew cautious. And that hesitation was the opening the alliance needed. Drake stood before his soldiers after yet another victory. His voice carried across the bay. You've proven something important today, he said. The Karvek are not invincible. They believe numbers win wars, but you have shown them something stronger, the power of a mind that refuses to surrender. The soldiers erupted in cheers. They no longer looked broken. They no longer looked afraid. They looked ready. The turning point ahead, Drake knew this was only the beginning. The Karvek would not accept defeat so easily. They would return, larger and stronger than ever before. But that was exactly what he wanted, because the human was preparing a plan unlike anything the galaxy had seen. A plan not just to resist the Karvek, but to strike at the heart of their pride. And when that moment came, the galaxy would learn a truth it had long forgotten. Never underestimate a human. The victories at Vera Station and other nearby systems had lit a small flame across the Alliance. That flame was growing. Soldiers who once fought only to delay the inevitable now spoke of striking back. Commanders who had once clung to defensive lines now asked for plans of attack. At the center of it all stood Captain Elias Drake, the human who had shown them that the Karvek were not invincible. Yet even as the Council celebrated these small victories, Drake knew the war was far from over. The Karvek had been shaken, yes, but not broken. And he understood something the others did not. A proud enemy, once humiliated, would return with greater fury, and they did. The gathering storm scouts brought grim news. The Karvek were moving an enormous fleet toward the mid-rim systems. Entire star maps lit up red with enemy signals. Dozens of warships, each bristling with weapons, gathered into one massive armada. They mean to crush us in one strike, Chancellor Veyron said during the council meeting. His voice carried both fear and awe. If this fleet breaks through, the core worlds will fall. Despair returned to the chamber. Many whispered that all hope had been foolish. But Drake stood at the center of the room, calm as ever. They are coming in force, he said. Good. That means they've grown predictable again. And predictable enemies can be beaten. The council turned to him, half in disbelief, half in desperate hope. You cannot mean to face that armada, said one delegate. It is too large. Even united, we cannot outfight them. Drake's lips curved in the faintest smile. I don't plan to outfight them. I plan to outthink them. The plan in the days that followed, Drake worked with Commander Rethan and the other officers of Vera Station. He drew maps, moved markers, and outlined ideas that at first seemed like madness. We will let them believe they have cornered us, he explained. We will lure them into the system of Thalon's rift. Rethan frowned. That region is unstable. Gravity storms, collapsing asteroids, shifting magnetic fields. No sane commander would fight there. Exactly, Drake said. The Karvek expect us to cling to safe ground. They think in straight lines. We'll give them the illusion of an easy kill, then let the rift do the rest. The plan was daring. They would scatter false signals, convincing the Karvek that a weak Alliance fleet was hiding in the rift. Once the enemy entered, hidden strike teams would attack from the shadows. Gravity storms would tear at their formations, and the Karvek, trained only to follow rigid orders, would fall apart in the chaos. Some commanders called it madness. Others feared it would doom them all, but Drake's quiet confidence convinced them in the end. We have a choice, he told them. Wait for the Karvek to crush us or meet them where they least expect it. I know which choice I'd rather make. Into the rift the trap was set. Decoy ships transmitted signals of weakness, pretending to be damaged and scattered. When the Karvek scouts reported this, The enemy armada charged forward, confident of easy victory. The rift greeted them with a storm of shifting debris and glowing fields of energy. Their formations tightened, their weapons charged. Victory seemed certain. That was when Drake gave the order. From hidden positions, Alliance fighters struck. They darted through asteroid shadows, firing and vanishing. Mines disguised as rocks exploded in the middle of Carvec squadrons. Entire wings of enemy ships spun out of control as gravity fields pulled them off course. The Carvec responded with overwhelming firepower. But the more they tried to force order, the more the rift tore them apart. Chaos unleashed. Commander Rethan led the fighters with a fierce cry. Strike and fade. Make them chase shadows. The Carvec, unused to an enemy that refused to meet them head-on, grew frustrated. They broke formation to hunt individual Alliance ships, exactly as Drake had planned. In one sector, a squadron of Carvec destroyers fired at what seemed to be a fleeing Alliance cruiser. At the last moment, the cruiser split apart into decoy drones while hidden turrets struck from behind. The destroyers, confused and exposed, were ripped apart by crossfire. In another, a group of enemy frigates chased a small team of fighters into a glowing cloud. When they entered, their sensors went blind. By the time they stumbled out, Alliance bombers had already destroyed half their engines. Across the rift, battle cries replaced despair. The soldiers of the Alliance fought not with fear but with cunning and fire. They were no longer prey. They were hunters, the flagship. Yet even as the battle turned, the Carvec unleashed their greatest weapon, the dreadnought Bloodfang. A colossal ship, its black hull bristling with weapons, dwarfing every vessel in the rift. Its cannons unleashed storms of fire, tearing through asteroids as though they were dust. Fear rippled through the Alliance ranks. "We cannot match that ship," one commander cried, but Drake's voice cut through the fear. "Every ship has a weakness. That one will fall like the rest." He boarded a strike shuttle with a small team of soldiers, volunteers from different species, all eager to follow the human who had given them hope. Their target, the Bloodfang itself. The infiltration. The shuttle weaved through the chaos, slipping past enemy fire with impossible maneuvers. Drake piloted as though the rift itself was guiding him, dodging blasts by the width of a breath. They landed hard on the dreadnought's outer hull, cutting their way inside. The corridors were vast and cold, filled with the thunder of enemy boots. Drake led the way, moving with sharp precision. His team covered him, each step a battle for survival. They planted charges along power conduits, disabling weapons as they went. At last, they reached the core chamber. The heart of the Bloodfang pulsed with energy, feeding power to its massive cannons. Drake studied the controls, his eyes narrowing. One strike here and the entire ship collapses. The team worked fast, placing explosives. Enemy soldiers stormed in, roaring battle cries. Blaster fire filled the chamber. The team fought with everything they had, standing shoulder to shoulder. As the last charge was armed, Drake shouted, "Fall back! Now!" They raced through the corridors, alarms blaring behind them. The dreadnought shook with violent tremors. The fall of the beast from the rift below, Alliance soldiers watched in awe as the Bloodfang erupted in a chain of explosions. Its massive frame broke apart, fire spilling into the void. The Carvec fleet faltered. Their pride, their unbreakable unity shattered before their eyes. Ships wavered, formations crumbled, and commanders hesitated for the first time in memory. That hesitation was fatal. The Alliance pressed forward with renewed fury, striking hard and fast. Within hours, the once mighty armada was in retreat, scattering into the depths of space. The rift belonged to the Alliance. Aftermath. When the battle ended, the soldiers gathered in triumph. Cheers echoed across comms, through halls, and in every heart. For the first time in years, the Carvec had been defeated in open battle. Drake stood among them, his coat scorched, his face marked with ash. But his eyes were steady, his voice calm. "This is not the end," he told them. "The Carvec will return. They will come stronger, angrier. But remember this moment. Remember that they can bleed. Remember that when you stand together, when you refuse to fight their way, you can break them." The soldiers roared in answer, their voices rising like thunder. A new fear far away in the war chambers of the Carvec. The news of the Bloodfang's destruction spread like poison. The warlords raged, their pride wounded beyond repair. Among their furious cries, one word appeared again and again: a word that now carried fear where once there had been only contempt. Human. The battle at Thalen's Rift had changed everything. What was once a scattered and frightened alliance now stood taller, their voices louder, their courage stronger. Across 100 worlds, people whispered of the victory, passing the story from one station to the next. They spoke of ships darting through chaos, of mighty dreadnoughts exploding into fire, and of one human who had led them into the storm and returned alive. The name of Captain Elias Drake spread like wildfire. To some, he was a savior. To others, he was proof that the Karvek were not gods of war, but creatures that could be beaten. For the Karvek, however, his name became a curse, a shadow that haunted their commanders. But Drake himself did not seek glory. He sat in the command chamber of Vera Station, staring at the star map, his expression unreadable. Around him, council members celebrated, but he remained still. Victory was sweet, yes, but he knew it was only the beginning. The council's offer, Captain Drake, Chancellor Varen said, stepping forward with a proud smile. You have done more for us than any army in generations. You have given us back our hope. We would be honored if you would take command of the Alliance fleet. The chamber erupted with cheers. Officers and leaders from a dozen species nodded eagerly, some even pounding the table in agreement. But Drake lifted his hand for silence. His voice was calm but firm. Hope is not mine to command. I will not lead your fleet. I will teach you to lead yourselves. The words shocked many. A murmur swept across the chamber. Some protested, others stared in disbelief. But Varen's eyes narrowed with understanding. You mean to leave? Drake gave a small nod. Your people must believe in themselves, not in a single human. If they fight only because of me, then they will collapse when I am gone. No, this war must belong to all of you. I'll help where I can, but I won't let myself become your crutch. Seeds of strength over the following weeks. Drake trained commanders in strategies the Karvik could not predict. He showed them how to adapt, how to bend instead of break, how to think beyond rigid orders. Never fight them where they are strongest. He told them, strike where they do not expect you. Be patient, be clever, and never let them dictate the field. He walked the training grounds with soldiers, listening more than he spoke. He sparred with recruits not to humiliate them, but to teach resilience. And when the soldiers stumbled, he reminded them of what mattered most. Every time you rise after a fall, you teach the Karvik a lesson they cannot understand. That is what makes you dangerous. That is what makes you free. Slowly, the soldiers began to believe not only in him, but in themselves. Shadows in the void. But while the alliance grew stronger, the Karvik plotted revenge. Their pride had been scarred, their fleets humbled, and their warlords furious. Scouts reported strange movements along the borders. Fleets massing, worlds falling silent, supply lines vanishing. The Karvik were preparing something new, something vast. The storm will return, Drake warned the council. Do not mistake this quiet for peace. They are waiting for us to grow careless. Some leaders wanted to strike first, to chase the enemy into their territory. Others feared such boldness would invite disaster. Debate filled the halls of the Alliance, but one truth remained. The Karvik would not forgive the humiliation of Thalen's Rift. The final test. When the Karvik finally struck, they came not with one fleet, but many. Across 3 sectors, their warships poured through hyperspace lanes, setting fire to outer colonies. Panic threatened to spread once again. But this time, the Alliance was not the same. This time, they had learned. Under Drake's guidance, fleets moved like water, flowing around the enemy instead of facing them head-on. Worlds were evacuated with speed and precision. Traps were laid, diversions crafted, and false trails scattered across the stars. The Karvik found themselves chasing ghosts, their mighty warships firing into empty space while Alliance forces struck at their supplies. Little by little, the invincible enemy grew frustrated, confused, and divided. And when the time was right, the Alliance struck back with precision. Fleets converged, not to win a single grand battle, but to win 100 small ones. Each strike chipped away at the Karvik's pride, until even their commanders began to doubt. The humans' choice, after months of fighting. The Alliance had achieved what once seemed impossible. The Karvik were no longer advancing. Their fleets were bleeding. Their leaders were quarreling. For the first time, they were on the defensive. The council begged Drake to stay, to continue guiding them until the war was won. But Drake only shook his head. My work here is done, he said softly. You don't need me anymore. You've proven that. The Karvik fear you now, not just me. And they should. Commander Rethan, who had once doubted him, stood at his side. But if you leave, where will you go? Drake looked out at the stars, his expression distant. There will always be someone who needs help. That's what humans do, isn't it? We wander into dark places and we show that light is still possible. Rethan bowed his head with respect. Then may the stars guide you, Elias Drake. The departure. The day Drake left, the docking bays of Vera Station overflowed with soldiers and civilians alike. They had come not to beg him to stay, but to honor him. As he walked toward his ship, voices rose in unison, not of sorrow, but of pride. Songs of victory, chants of unity, cheers that shook the walls. He stopped at the ramp, turning to face them one last time. His voice carried over the roar. Remember this, no enemy is invincible. No darkness is eternal. Stand together and nothing can break you. That is your legacy. Carry it well. With that, he boarded his ship. The engines flared, and the vessel rose into the stars, shrinking to a point of light before vanishing into hyperspace. The legacy of humanity, years passed. The war with the Karvik dragged on, fierce and unrelenting. But the Alliance endured. Their fleets grew stronger, their strategies sharper, their courage unshakable. And through it all they remembered the human who had stood with them when hope was gone. His lessons lived in every commander who dared to think differently, in every soldier who refused to yield, and in every world that chose to fight instead of surrender. The Karvik still spoke of him in hushed tones, a name that lingered like a ghost. Drake, the human. To them, he was a symbol of fear, a reminder that even the greatest empire could bleed. To the Alliance, he was something more. He was proof that courage could come from the unlikeliest place, proof that one spark of defiance could ignite a fire across the stars. And though Elias Drake himself was gone, his legacy remained. Every time an Alliance ship struck where the enemy least expected, every time a soldier rose from the ashes of defeat, every time the Karvik trembled at the thought of facing mortals who refused to bow, humanity's mark was there. A reminder carved into the heart of the galaxy. Our foes claimed victory until we asked a human for help.